will be shared via our listservs next week. So again, welcome to AI and Revolving Loan Funds. My name is Tony Stinnet, and I'm a program manager with GrowAmerica, formerly the National Development Council. This presentation is being offered through the Revolving Loan Fund Community of Practice, operated by GrowAmerica, with support from the U.S. Economic Development Administration and our partners, as well as by the Economic Development District Community of Practice, operated by the National Association of Development Organizations. Quick overview of our agenda to start. I'll speak a little bit about our COP, and then Dion will speak about his. We'll get into a few of those mentee questions. And then we'll be able to turn to our wonderful presenters. We're going to hear from Dr. Fuqua about what is AI, Ryan Richardson, a practitioner, about how he uses AI for lending, and Jason, a consultant, a communication and technology consultant for our organization, GrowAmerica, about guardrails and reminders when using AI. At the very end, we will have a panelist discussion facilitated by Mary Lauk. So again, if you have any questions, please make sure to add those into the chat. A little bit more information about the Revolving Loan Fund Community of Practice. The primary objective of this COP is to increase the capacity of RLFs to meet the needs of their local economic development strategies. You can see we have a couple of kind of sub goals underneath that primary objective, and we really try to meet that objective through 4 key pillars. The first is training and resources. Our virtual portal, which I'll link in the chat, that's where we store all of our webinar recordings, as well as slides, any other really helpful resources. There's also a forum there if you ever want to have some conversations with practitioners in your region. A 6-month cohort trainings, which have completed, and then monthly webinars like this one. We also do an industry analysis. One of our partners is Drexel University's NOAC Metro Finance Lab, and they'll do self-assessments and use ED 209 data to think through and create a report for EDA and for the broader audience about the challenges and realities that RLFs are facing. Our goal, our hope, is for that report to come out this fall, so please be on the lookout for that. It will be uploaded to our portal. And then finally, we have an advisory committee made up of 9 peer leaders from across the country, including one here today with Ryan, that really helps to provide insight and kind of confirm and help us make sure that we are presenting information and resources that are helpful to you. So with that, I will turn it over to Dion.
Thank you, Tony, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dion Thompson-Davoli. I'm a program manager with the National Association of Development Organizations, where I help to co-lead our Economic Development District Community of Practice. The Community of Practice is a peer learning and resource sharing cohort sponsored by the Economic Development Administration. And we seek to advance the practice of economic development at the regional level with the country's 405 or so economic development districts. I think many of our EDDs in the network sit in organizations that also host RLFs, which is fantastic. There's a great nexus between economic development planning work that districts do, and then the practice of RLFs with small business and entrepreneurial support. So those things really do go hand in hand. If your organization does not work closely with an RLF or is not an RLF or an EDD, there's a great collaborative opportunity, and we would love to make that connection happen. So if you are an RLF looking to meet an EDD in your region, please feel free to reach out to Tony or to me. And if you're an EDD looking to learn more about RLFs that may be operating in some of your communities, please do the same. I'll go ahead and put my email address in the chat. The other resource, Tony, if you can go to the next slide that I have. If you're an RLF, this is a great place to start for finding out what EDD is in your region. Our interactive national map you can zoom in or search for your community, click on it, and it will tell you what district serves the place that you work. And it will also have a link to their regional strategic plan and some contact information. So that is a great place to start. as well. If you have any other questions related to this webinar, please feel free to send them along. But that's really all I have. I'm excited for this conversation. We've got some great panelists. Ryan Richardson is actually with an EDD, and then we've been really pleased to engage with Dr. Don in the past year or so as well. So I think it's going to be a great conversation, and thank you for having me on.
Great, thank you, Dion. And we will go back to Menti for some further questions. These questions will help our presenters understand who is in the audience, but will also give a little bit of color to one another as well, so we can understand a little bit more. Excellent. So it seems like there's definitely some kind of general knowledge about AI. We'll go to the next question, which is asking how you've used it in a professional setting. So the street tree conversation, draft fantasy football that we discussed at the beginning, for those who weren't able to join, that's a good incentive to join early next time. That would not qualify as a professional setting use. Unless you're an arborist, I suppose. Awesome. And again, if you are in that other category, other ways that you have used AI, please feel free to add that information to the chat. So go to the next question. Oh gosh, sorry. Wrong screen share. Here we go. Great. And while everyone is, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to move one screen, and every time I click on it, I'm just going to quickly move this so that I can share what I need to share here. Thank you for your patience there. So while everyone is typing in their response of what they think is the biggest opportunity for AI, I'll start with some introductions for our speakers. Professor Don Fuqua will be our first presenter. He serves as an associate professor in New Mexico State University's College of Business and is a co-founder of the Center for Supply Chain Analytics. He has authored numerous journal articles in decision systems, predictive analytics, and supply chain optimization, and saved as a PI or co-PI on grants totaling $5.4 million. His current research areas include studies of barriers to artificial intelligence implementation in the borderland, human computing interactions, and large-scale agricultural supply chain optimization. His PhD is in industrial engineering with a doctoral minor in applied statistics. Prior to becoming a professor, he served as an active duty U.S. Army officer with duty in both regular and special operations units. He commanded at the platoon, company, and battalion level, with each of those levels having operational or combat deployed commands. Thank you for your service, Dr. Don Fuqua. Scroll down here and go to the next question. Our second presenter is Ryan Richardson. Ryan is one of the peer leaders for the RLF-COP. He is also the executive director at Superior California Economic Development. Ryan was the lone program manager at his organization for 17 years before becoming the executive director. As the son of a small business owner, Ryan understands the importance and role of small businesses in the community. Our final presenter is Jay Sen. Jay is a management consultant, strategic technologist, and digital communications expert with more than 3 decades of experience in all aspects of digital communications and marketing. He specializes in communication audits and analysis, process work, team building and management, inception strategy, and creative ideation for large campaigns. He has managed projects that involved major branding and marketing initiatives in both commercial and nonprofit sectors from conception through execution. After Jay's presentation, Mary Lapp will facilitate a panel discussion with our 3 presenters. Mary is the Director of Credit for GrowAmerica. Sticking with today's topic, the questions she'll be asking come from ChatGPT, but I will also be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you do have any questions, please do add them to our chat for our presenters. Great, and with that kind of final word cloud here, we have accuracy, security. I see inaccuracy. I'm going to kind of pump that into the accuracy question here as being some of the biggest concerns with AI. And with that, I will turn it over back to our presentation and our slides. We will turn it over to Dr. Don.
Hi, welcome. My name is Don Fuqua. I'm an associate professor here at New Mexico State University down in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I do work a lot with AI systems in terms of optimizing, in terms of decision science, expert systems. And one of the things I saw in some of the responses, especially early on and during another presentation I did with economic development, is most people think of AI in terms of generative AI, what they see in terms of being able to write, hey, I want a picture of a unicorn jumping over a rainbow. Gemini, ChatGPT, or most systems will actually do that for you without a lot of drama. Or help me write a really quick summary report or an email to somebody else. Those are the kinds of things we think about with AI, but AI goes a lot way. It has a much deeper history, I think, in that, and especially when I'm looking over some of the RLF objectives, such as increasing organizational capacity, increasing the volume of loans and loan capital, helping understand broader economic development strategies. I think that you have a lot more you have a lot more opportunities than just allowing ChatGPT to give you a picture of a unicorn jumping over a rainbow. So if we can go over the next slide, I have these slides pretty minimally because I want to do more talking, and I really don't try and put more things on slides if I don't need to. First of all, I'll tell you guys that right now we see lots of hype on AI, and I was talking to a class the other day, and I said, we're everywhere you turn right now, we're talking about AI, even though AI has really been around since the 1950s. So we're in a very hot period. I can guarantee you that we're going to have a cooling probably within the next few years, just like we did in 1998, where we had a market crash with technology stocks, where people said, okay, yeah, we got really excited about internet for a while. Now it kind of cooled off. The stocks for that area is cooled down. And then it becomes a new normal later on, probably in the next four to 5 years after that. It just kind of becomes a new normal and people are using it. And I really see the same thing happening with AI. I'll tell you that when I did my PhD, all we did was machine learning. And machine learning is a portion of AI, even though what we talk about a lot is now the generative systems. But really, the idea behind AI is the ability for a computer to create new content on things that haven't been seen yet. So, for example, I can get a lot of data from, for example, loans. Whether loans are successful or not, I can create a model that helps me understand what has failed in the past, what has succeeded in the past. I can do some feature analysis of that to figure out what are the features that are really impactful toward having a business succeed or not. And then later on, I can get data from a new company that's coming about, and I can make a prediction about whether that's going to be successful or not based on a model I've used. Sometimes that's successful, sometimes it's not. If we've had distributional shifts, for example, in the way in the ecosystem behind the loans or whatever I'm trying to study. But in general, that's what when we talk about AI, we're talking about the ability for a computer to form a model that is able to predict or make new content that it hasn't been seen before. These have multiple roles in multiple industries. We've done projects for auto manufacturer tier one. So for folks I'll tell you an example is we did a big project for Maquila in Mexico that makes products for GM, Ford, BMW, Honda, and Nissan out of their factories. They have about 19 factories throughout Mexico, and they're having a lot of problems with inventory control. How much inventory do we need for new products, especially as they have new products come about. And we were able to develop machine learning models for them to be able to predict how much inventory they needed based on trends in the marketplace. So again, it's not, when it's not the generative AI thing where there's a lot of bells and whistles, but they're very, very powerful techniques. I can't see that. Can it help advise the prompts to use AI? Ugh, I can only see part of the question.
That's
Anyone
great.
help me
Those
out?
two questions. Yep. So both
Yeah.
Carol and Pamini, Ryan Richardson will definitely talk about some of the specifics of how AI and lending interact as well. So we will make sure that those questions are answered. If not by Ryan, then definitely during the Q&A.
And I'll tell you, as long as I can create a powerful model and I have different techniques to use to say whether it's a powerful model or not, and then to test it along the way. So absolutely, if you can create a powerful model that predicts something, you can absolutely use it in a wide variety of sectors. Let's go to the next slide. So generally, everything we talk about right now in terms of AI is narrow artificial intelligence. So when I talk about building a model, say for example, if I'm trying to figure out inventory control, I can develop a very powerful model that only does inventory control. Or I can figure out a very powerful image recognition software that figures out whether a part coming off an assembly line is good or bad. But I'm asking a very specific thing for a computer to do based on a very repetitive task. And that's really what we see with 99% of AI right now, where you're asking a very specific task, you're getting a very specific model to do that kind of work. We are definitely not in an era of artificial general intelligence where we can ask multiple tasks of a computer to do or based on multiple models. The computer scientists I work with say that's probably 10 to 15 to 20 years out. It probably will happen in our lifetime, but it is quite a ways out. Okay, I saw the question, but I think that's later on. We also have super intelligence where a computer definitely outperforms a human. We see a lot of this, and there is some overlap between narrow AI and artificial super intelligence. For example, my inventory management systems definitely outperform what a human can do, just basically looking at data. Definitely self-driving cars with long range camera sensors with IR and everything else definitely can outperform a basic tasks from a human. And we're seeing more and more of these pop up as we go. Let's go to the next slide. So I'll tell you a little vignette. When I was doing my PhD, again, everything we were doing was machine learning. At one point, I read a paper about what they call image transfer recognition, where they take a neural net and basically flip the outputs and inputs to where you could take a picture of a scenery, and then you could take a bunch of images of Picasso paintings and then redo the painting in the style redo your photograph in the style of Picasso paintings. That was really the first part of generative AI. Generative AI saw that in the 2018, 2017 when they first started playing around with it. And honestly, my thought in that was that it was a toy. It was kind of fun, but really AI was centered on machine learning. And that really came about with computer vision, being able to classify images as one thing or another. So for example, if I had, and I'll tell you one of the first papers that came out of that was 2003. A guy named Jan LeCun was working for Bell Labs and came up with a computer program that was able to tell what a number of, different. So let me go back real quick. There was a data set of 70,000 images that Bell Lab created from high school students, writing the numbers 0 through 9. They were able to take those, create what we call a training data set and a test data set. And with the training data set, with I believe it was 50,000 images, they were able to use what was called a convolutional neural net to do image classification, and they were able to get about 98% accuracy off that data set. Today it's about 99%. But that was really the start of computer vision. Things like neural nets or neural networks in order to either classify or regress based on lots of data, or what we call deep learning, which is where we use lots of data and really strong algorithms or neural nets to tease out a lot of the temporal connections between different variables. We also have sensory AI, where we use either expert systems or IoT in order to get data off like a processing line or off of a manufacturing line, where we can figure out if there's defects in parts based on temperature, based on again computer vision to see if we can see cracks in surfaces. We have generative AI, which started out as regular neural nets, but went into what we call transformer models that are able to take an output and input and switch them around to where we have a model built on what is normally an input to get an output to come out of it. And again, we see a lot more of these with generative systems, such as Gemini, ChatGPT. The strongest one right now is Llama or Meta, which is trained on exabytes of data. It generally takes months to train these kind of models, and they're very powerful. In the next, I wish this were more of an audience kind of thing, because I would ask how many of you have heard of either agentic systems or physical AI. Those are the next things that are coming down, and basically every month we see new papers come out from Google, from NVIDIA, Facebook, from universities on new techniques that are coming out, because generative AI will give you a very surface explanation of something. What agentic systems tend to do is ask the next question and the next question. So you might have a system that says, how are tariffs affecting this market that we have? The agentic system will give you the phrase. It will say, this is what's happening. Here's what's happening in the next 3 months. Here's what we suggest is going to happen in the next 6 months. And here's how we suggest that your business will update on those. These are generally built through stacked large language models with vector databases that are able to connect these. Physical AI is more where we're talking self-driving cars, robotic cranes on robotic gantry cranes on container ports, and other things where AI is actually able to interface with physical networks. And again, we talked about general AI, which is more of the idea where a computer system can understand and work in multiple different arrangements, even if it's not what we specifically trained it to do. And again, this is probably 10 to 15 years out, but we expect to see that in our lifetime. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so there's lots of different AI in business, and again, we should not limit our understanding of AI just to ChatGPT and Gemini kind of things. So with tech support, we definitely see a large growth in tech support. For a long time, tech support was based on general rules or very basic expert systems, but we're seeing tech support being taken over entirely by computer networks. To where someone can pick up a phone, and again, this is part of a Turing test kind of thing, where we say, can we distinguish between a computer and a person? And obviously now that's probably not true, because a lot of tech centers are being taken over by AI, where someone will call in, they'll say, hey, I'm having problems with this item. Here's where I'm located, and the computer will actually be able to have a strong enough model to be able to work someone through an entire problem that they're having and provide a solution. We have strong decision systems being built by AI. The ones I work on, which are inventory control, transportation kind of networks, are able to provide a decision to someone based on a new condition, to say, based on a new part that we're building, this is what we believe the inventory is, this is what we believe the demand for that item is. For financial analysis, this can be whether we think a loan is going to succeed or fail. This can be, or a project could succeed or fail. We can do lots of fraud analytics that are much stronger than some of the techniques that we have today. When we talk about predictive and prescriptive analytics, that comes down to describing a situation based on the data provided, and actually providing a solution as we go. For computer human interactions, these are wearable technologies that we see coming out, very quickly. I know a lot of people talk about Google Glasses being, kind of a failure from 10, 15 years ago, but a lot of the technology that was gleaned from Google Glasses, we're now starting to see in the Ray-Ban glasses that are coming out now, or more wearable and implantable kind of technology as we go along. Okay, so I think that's for, let's go to the next slide. So having gone through the slides really quick, I know I only had a few minutes to go over this, and hopefully I provided a basic overview of AI to you, but are there any questions of me before I hand it over to the next presenter?
I have a question, Don.
Sure.
What is a platform example of an agent genetic system? Like you talked about regenerative being ChatGPT or Llama.
If you really want to know that, I would go to developer.nvidia.com, and they have some wonderful examples that are coming out for that. So one example is that they've been working on, I know NVIDIA, because I did a conference with them this summer, is that one of the issues that they've had is multimedia inputs. So for example, if you have an input like a PDF that has handwriting on it, it has pictures on it, it has text writing, it may even have a video it's attached with it. Being able to glean all the information coming out of there to provide meaning on what that is. To say, okay, this for example is a fraudulent report that is written up by some group, or this is an actual real invoice. And again, one of the issues that they've had in the past is it can do text really well, it can do video really well, or it can do maybe handwriting on its own. But combining those inputs into one has been very hard, and that's one of those agentic kind of systems where they're able to stack different LLMs to provide meaning based on many inputs at the same time. I hope that helped.
Yes, that's great. If you don't mind
Okay.
adding that website to the chat, I think that'd be very
Sure.
helpful. And
Absolutely.
with that, I will turn it over to Ryan. Thank you so much, Don.
Of course, thank you.
Tony, you want to go ahead and put that slide up? Thanks. All right, my name is Ryan Richardson. I'm the Executive Director of Superior California Economic Development. We're in the upper right-hand corner of California. We have a large geographic area. We're about the size of Vermont and New Hampshire combined, with about only 250,000 people here. As Tony said earlier, I've been with the company for 20 years, 17 years as loan program manager, and the last 3 years as executive director, and still working on loans. Dr. Don was talking about loan success analysis, putting small data sets. One of the things that we have with our RLFs, we're not huge. We have a $9 million RLF, about $26 million in SBA 504 loans. And, trying to get data from just our loans portfolio is not super easy. So, some of the things he's talking about, it's going to come down, and EDA is going to have to aggregate the information for us. But a lot of the things, the first point I want to make today is that AI, right where it is right now, does not replace a loan officer. You still need to have someone there that understands what they're doing and to evaluate the information that's coming out of the AI. So I put that picture of me up there. If you look at it, if you just glance at it, it looks kind of like me. but it's not exactly me. I actually used AI to come up with a headshot just for fun. It's kind of a unicorn jumping a rainbow kind of thing. I wanted to see what could happen. So I fed 4 pictures that I liked of me and made this guy. It looks enough like me, but again, that it enhances what I'm already doing. So, it gave me a better hairline, smoothed out some of the wrinkles, took some of the gray out. So that's kind of how I look at AI. It can help enhance what you're already doing. It's not going to take somebody who doesn't know anything about loans and make them an excellent loan officer. But if you already have a good loan officer, it can make them a little bit better. And that's what I want your takeaway today is one of the things that how you can use this. One of the, how I started with this was kind of interesting. I was at the NADO annual training conference in New Orleans last year, and we had a keynote speaker during the luncheon, and they talked about the environment and how everything was going sideways and how awful the world was. I mean, that was my takeaway. I'm sure they had a positive message in this somewhere, but I got really depressed listening to that. The next class I went to was about AI. And all of a sudden, they're talking about how this software or this things behind the curtain are going to take away what I spent the last 20 years learning. And so I headed up to my hotel room, even more depressed. I'm like, wow, this is not a great day for me. So I'm like, hey, let's give it a try. Let's see how this actually works. And so I had, I just finished underwriting a small little RLF, and I had the spreads on my computer, and I took the P&L, put it in there into Claude, put a real basic prompt, kind of tell me about this. What do you see? Create a narrative for it. And it provided a narrative, and it was actually pretty decent. And then I asked it, hey, what are some questions that I could ask the borrower about it? And then it went through and gave me some good questions, 5 or 6 questions. And those were the questions that I had asked the borrower too. So I'm like, oh, shoot, that's actually kind of cool, because it's going to be able to, and I started trying to get positive on this. Like, how can it free up the time that I have? Writing the narrative is not always the most exciting part of the job. The spreads can take time, the analysis. It's really, it's not the most exciting part, but it's definitely very important. And again, it's an enhancement to what I do. For us, there's only 4 people on my staff here. We're a small agency. We have, 2.5 people working on our loan programs. And, to increase volume, to increase our capacity, it's really expensive to hire somebody. So this is kind of an economical way that we can get through more loans in the same time. I don't know if you've ever had where you're trying to write that first draft of the narrative or write that first draft of an email, and it's just really tough. That's one thing that I'll use AI for quite a bit. It's like, hey, I start putting something in, it's kind of generic. I'll put it in there, say, hey, let's see, what can we do? I'll put a couple of different prompts, and it'll spit something out that's like, hey, that's a little bit, that's okay. That gives me a base to jump off of as well. And then it's kind of fun to learn something new. And that's one thing that I've really liked about this. I've got to explore, creativity, trying to create new prompts. What can I get it to do? What can't I get this to do as well? One thing, again, it does not replace your experience. So as we are right now, you just can't scan in tax returns, hit a button, and have a narrative come out and tell you exactly what's going to happen. Tony, can you go to the next slide, please? Thanks. Can I trust the accuracy? That was one of the big in the thought bubble, how people are worried about the accuracy. And it depends on the day, to be honest with you, and how good your prompt is, and then how many questions that you ask it at once. Yesterday, I was drafting an email to staff about some policy changes that are in our HR manual. And I said, hey, these are the things I want to cover. Just put together a quick little overview on these 4 items and cite the sources. And it spit something out. It looked very official. However, it said in the reference pages, hey, reference page 163, reference page 175. And I'm like, I look at our document. It only had 63 pages in it in total. So just something as basic as that spit out errors. And if I didn't go back and check it, it looked official enough, but it wasn't. And you'll notice this too, since you're the expert in the industry, if somebody gives you something, you can usually tell if they don't know what they're talking about. I had a board member provide some information on economic development, and it was close to being right. And I could tell it was generated through AI based on the font and the format and everything. And it's like, okay, you're about 70% correct on this. Does it protect sensitive data? That's something, it's a good question to ask. I think Jay's going to cover that and part of the thought process with what he's going to talk about next. Will this replace staff? Perhaps, perhaps not, because again, if it's a volume thing, if you're trying to increase your loan portfolio, maybe you can hire more loan officers so you can do more deals. Do you really want to have people working on the parts that are not value added, or perhaps you can use the people that were doing non-value added things to do something else within your organization? Is it ethical? That's a great question. I was talking to my daughter. She's 17, almost 18 years old. I told her, hey, I'm real excited. I'm going to do this presentation. She goes, oh, AI is horrible, Dad. It creates issues with the environment. It makes you dumber. All that. She gives me a whole litany of things. I'm like, wow, I didn't know you were paying attention about anything that in depth. And it really kind of bummed me out on my presentation. But I still think it's an interesting thing. It's going to be here. It's a tool, and just remember, it's a tool. It's not where we are now. It doesn't replace what we're doing. It just enhances. And then the question is, there's a lot of people who haven't done this in underwriting yet. How do I start? Where do we go? And that's Tony, if you want to go to the next one, I'll just kind of go over a couple of ways of what we're doing. So right now, that initial analysis, when we're doing the basic underwriting. Step one, I still spread the financial statements manually. I went to the NDC, which is now GrowAmerica training many, many, many years ago. And one of the things that I liked about it, they gave you a piece of paper, a pencil, and you use your calculator to manually do the calculations, because that way you learned how it works. Nowadays, I have an Excel spreadsheet, or we have underwriting software that does a lot of the calculations. But again, you still have to understand how things work. I still use a pencil and paper when I'm making notes. So when I'm going through the spreads, I like to take notes. If I see something, oh, that's kind of odd, it'll give me a question to go ahead and ask the borrower about. One thing that I have been using more of is the financial statement review. So I created projects in ChatGPT. Most everything I do right now is in ChatGPT. I like it. It's a system that I understand well enough. There are lots of different alternatives out there. There'll be new things coming out all the time, but this is the one that I use mostly. And projects within ChatGPT are really nice because you can set up instructions that'll do the same thing for you every time. And you can import documents that it pulls from. It's a really neat thing. If you haven't looked, if you haven't heard about it or haven't set a project up yet, do it, especially for things that you're doing on a routine manner. So I'll put in the spreads. I'll upload them to ChatGPT. And again, I find it works best to do one thing at a time. If you ask it to do all the financial spread analysis at once, it gets a little chunky. So I'll do the P&L first, do the balance sheet. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to. So I saw this question come in. Yeah, we're using the ChatGPT subscription version. Things like $20 a month, not too bad. It'll generate a narrative for me. And it's usually pretty close to what I'll write. Make sure you have to go through and edit it, because there are things will be there that will be incorrect. It'll make assumptions that aren't always there. So again, you can't just trust it blindly. I like to use it when I'm doing this to spot potential red flags. What did I miss when I was doing the underwriting? What questions did I not come up with? I like doing that because most of the times when I'm underwriting a loan, we'll do the initial analysis, and then I'll send a number of questions over to the borrower about their finances. It helps us from just doing the elevator analysis. So instead of just saying, revenues increased by 10% from year over year, I'd like to know why they increased, or why did expenses change? Why did these things happen? And this helps me generate those questions. Most of the time we come up with about the same questions. Sometimes it creates other ones that I didn't even think about. I'm like, oh, that's actually a really good idea. Another thing that I'm using it quite a bit for is industry analysis. One thing on these deals is that most of the time, after 17, 20 years of doing this, we know what deals we want to do. We know what the deals that look like. A lot of the times the underwriting becomes performative because, hey, I've done hundreds of these deals. We know it's going to go. Hey, if it meets these criteria, especially as an SBA loan, it's going to get approved for a 504. So sometimes, it's a lighter lift on the industry analysis where I created another project. I said, hey, this is the NAICS code, provide this information. And I give it a list of sources and say, hey, pull from here, here, and here, and whatever else you can find. And then it'll pull up it'll pull up the industry analysis. It's usually pretty good. It's good enough for the underwriting that I'm doing that time. If I'm doing a startup deal, then where I need to be more in depth, then I'll get the IBIS World Report because that I trust a little bit more than just what we're pulling off of different random sources. But I also like it because it'll generate specific borrower questions based on the industry. And I don't know the industries as well as they do. So these questions help. Again, this is something similar. If you have access to IBIS World, you can get those questions in there as well. And so I modeled my project kind of like the reports that we get from them. So I really like that part of it. It gives us just enough of what I need to do. It cites the sources so if I do need to go look back at it. Can you go to the next slide, please? Again, narratives, after you've done a couple of hundred loan memos, the narratives get really, really boring. So on the last deal that I did, the borrower gave me a really good resume. They had a LinkedIn profile. I had some information in their loan application. And what I did, I said, hey, take this information, create a professional summary for me. And it did. It was really in depth. I went and narrowed it down for what we could use. I like to, it saved time on there because basically I was reading off his resume, putting it in. It was just copying and pasting. So a lot of this analysis or what we're doing here is not in-depth analysis. It's just the narrative that I'm pulling from things already. For the loan application, or sorry, for the narrative, using the business history, trying to come up with that. Typically what we would do is pull it from, again, copy and paste from the application or pulling it from the corporate website. And what I did, I asked it to go ahead and build that narrative for me. Take this information, here are the sources, build a narrative, boom, pops it out. Again, you have to edit it to make sure it's correct. Similar things on the personal financial statement, the cash flow. It creates that first draft narrative that sometimes takes a little bit longer. I go back through and edit it out. And then the fun part was, when you're doing your pros and cons or your summary of your deal, what I like to, this was kind of fun because you can put the draft memo in there and say, hey, what are the pros and cons? What are the mitigants to this? Should we not do the deal? And it puts up some different, always different things that I come up with. Some are relative, some are not. So again, you have to go back through and figure it out. Let's see. Thank you. And this one, oh, you can go back one, please. Using AI as a second reviewer, this is super important for me when I'm a small organization. I've been doing it a long time, but there'll be things that I overlook. There's nothing worse than getting into loan committee and having them ask, but I think, oh gosh, that was kind of an obvious question. How did I miss that one? Because I like to have everything addressed, or most as I can, addressed in the write-up. Clarity and readability. I have a project that's set up for it's called rewrite this in a concise manner, rewrite for clarity. And sometimes I'll struggle with a sentence like, gosh, this isn't quite flowing. I'll put it in there and it'll pop out something that like, okay, that's a little more reasonable. Completeness. I always like asking, hey, did I forget something? What did I miss up? And sometimes it goes, hey, did a good job. Sometimes it comes back and says, hey, you might want to look at this section. Risk and mitigation. I love asking a lot of my prompts, no matter what I'm working on, will ask about potential red flags. What's there, and to make sure that we address it, that we have a mitigate to it, whether it be something we take additional collateral, or it's something that we just recognize that in our RLF world, these things are normal for what we do. And, the tone and professionalism, I'd like to have pretty consistent loan memos. And throughout the loan memo, I want to make sure it flows nicely. So this helps too. It'll make suggestions. I set it up so it'll make suggestions like, hey, you could change this a little bit to keep that flow going. So I do it on myself to look at it. Then I also have a new loan officer that we've been training, and I like to have her go through these steps before she submits it to me for a final review. So that way she learns, it's kind of a self-feedback on there, so she learns how to do it. And plus it takes less time for me to go back and to say, hey, these are the kind of the basic things. You missed this. This could be improved here. What about this? It doesn't do a great job of reviewing the financials once it's in there. It gives it too much of stuff. So mostly at this point, it's a narrative. So I still have to visually go through the financials, make sure it makes sense. We had one the other day where we copied and pasted something in from an Excel spreadsheet into our narrative. Some of the cells were missing. So if you tried to add it up, it was way off. It didn't catch that. I caught it. And it's just one of those things that you still have to review. Go ahead. Next slide. So some of the fun things, the projects that I've set up, drafting emails can get a little bit boring, or I want to have a consistency, professionalism. I read an article about a military style of emails that I thought, hey, that's kind of cool. It takes a lot of the fluff out, tells you what the objective is in there, gives you a good title. And so I set up a project in there. I'll write my first draft. It'll come back with something. A lot of times I'll make a few changes to it, but it kind of professionalizes some of the emails that I like. For board reports, definitely been using this. I'll write, my board reports, I'll write myself. They're usually long. And then sometimes we'll put a memo sheet on top to summarize, because I found out that board members don't always read the whole report. So a memo sheet on top that kind of breaks it down specifically. Chat helps with that. I have a project in there. And then my last board meeting, I realized people were still not reading it. So we started doing more visual things with the presentations. And so I had standardize, my slides. This is what we want to talk about. This is how we want it presented. Here's the memo. I uploaded that. It pulled out the information so I could go ahead. They would have that in front of them when I was talking about it. It flowed nicely. We're making changes to it. And that's one thing that as this software and AI advances, it changes a lot. What I was doing a year ago is way different than what we can do with it now. It's advanced quite a bit, and it'll be changing all the time. The projects I go back and edit, I go our instructions, the prompts, and say, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that differently. Marketing and training materials, I've used it as well. The example here I used on a LinkedIn, that's a generated picture as well. I think, even the context is generated, the content is generated as well. I go and edit it. I gave parameters. I said I wanted, 5 different fun facts to put out once a month, and it helped come up with ideas for that. And then on the productivity and learning side, I listen to a lot of economic development podcasts, and it's 45 minutes to an hour, and I'll be driving. But I'll want it summarized. You can actually copy and paste the text into, ChatGPT. And from there, it'll create a summary, and I can save that summary so I can go back and find it again. Brainstorming, borrower questions and ideas, just always trying to figure out, hey, what else can we do? What questions can we ask? And then there's different ways for, it's kind of, this is back when my daughter told me I'm getting dumber by using it. But I like to think of it as a backup kind of for all the things that I read or the reports, because we, in economic development, whether if you're doing loans and something else, I also work on our planning side. So we have reports all the time, and I use it for grant applications quite a bit, where I'm pulling, I'll upload our SEDS, upload other reports that are necessary. I'm like, hey, how would you answer this question? and help give me something from there. I'll go with that. You can get the next slide, please.
And Ryan, we actually have to move to Jay.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
That's okay. But these slides will be uploaded to our portal. So you can definitely continue reviewing them later. This webinar is until 15 minutes past the hour, but we just want to make sure that we have some chance to get into the Q&A. So all these slides will be uploaded. But with that, I think I will turn it over to Jay. Thanks, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll move very, very quickly through my material. This is the sort of like more bigger contextual questions about AI. I see things like this all the time on social media, and this is obviously a joke post. There are several things that resulted in OpenAI having a big drop in the number of tokens it was using. Those are computational units in AI processing. But the fact that it's plausible that cheating students going on summer vacation was the reason for a huge drop in OpenAI computation gives you one of those sort of moments of like, oh, that's funny, and then makes you kind of gives you that feeling of the ground going beneath your feet, and you're sort of like, well, what are people using it for? And then, then you kind of move on with your day. I noticed that we had 3 AI note takers just in this webinar, suspiciously glossy, LinkedIn headshots, Ryan, questioning teenagers, saying, it's making us dumber. So what are kind of the bigger philosophical and metaphysical dimensions? Tony, if we could go to the next slide. I will move very, very, very quickly through this. But these are kind of 4 categories that there is a lot of scholarship and a lot of intellectual debate about. And certainly, if you're like me, you have wondered about all these things yourself. Ethical and social risks, environmental and resource costs. Again, we're tracking almost 100% with what Ryan's daughter was questioning him on. Public misconceptions, misinformation, and hype. And then finally, governance, accountability, and power. How do these things affect our societies and even globally, our cultures and our politics? So going to the next slide, Tony. Ethical and social risk can be, the sort of biggest hot button issues. There are many, many more that people are discussing, but it really comes down to kind of these. A lot of my direct relationship with AI of its current generation is because as a consultant at GrowAmerica, the GrowAmerica board of directors wanted to raise and surface some questions about the use of ethics, the ethical use of AI in GrowAmerica's work. And an AI expert came and spoke with us. We were able to pepper her with questions in an all-day session, and there were some real questions about bias. What is AI actually trained on? How does it have inherent discrimination within it based on the assumptions that are baked into the way that it processes language? We've talked about privacy erosion and the use of AI in surveillance. An enormous amount of data is collected about all of us, and the saving grace was that there was no way to process or sift through all that data. Now there is, and to summarize it and to give surveillance actors in our world, including government agencies, the ability to really make much more use of surveillance data and personally identifying information. And then also the question of labor displacement. We keep hearing about how it's going to save us all a lot of time. I know I just get busier, but then whose jobs is it replacing? And potentially for any of us, maybe our entire job or our entire function in some way or another. And look at the next slide. I put together just a couple of data points here. I won't go through them exhaustively. This deck, as Tony mentioned, will be available for people who view the webinar. But here's some really shocking statistics about people's perceptions and expectations, but also kind of some more texture about what AI is actually trained on and the kind of biases that it inherently picks up from that language. I'm one of the the authors actually whose work was ingested into AI. So my work has actually been stolen in violation of US copyright to train language models. And you can tell ChatGPT to write in my style, which it does very badly. And it has learned this by stealing my books, my content that I wrote. Going to the next slide, there's some key voices working in these particular areas. The ethical dimensions of AI. Again, you can pursue these later on, but especially Shoshana Zuboff in particular talks about surveillance and the use of surveillance technologies and surveillance interpretation technologies in our society. Well worth a read. The second kind of biggest issue is really environmental, kind of in resource-based concerns. Again, this bothered Brian's daughter. It bothers me as well. We all probably heard about that whole controversy in early June of this year. Elon Musk's, XAI plant data center was polluting South Mississippi, a predominantly black neighborhood in South Memphis, Tennessee, and people were being displaced from their homes due to the level of pollution from these gas turbines that were being used to generate this phenomenal amount of energy. It's a question as well about water consumption and use, as well as rare earth mineral use in computational hardware. On the next slide, a couple of data points related to environment, just the sheer energy cost of AI systems. As AI systems get more sophisticated, they're devouring more energy. Google's AI operations alone use 5 billion liters of water. This is in 2022. That's probably tripled. Will triple by 2027. So water is a global concern. So this is really kind of alarming. On the next slide, there are a couple of voices here. Emma Strubel's work in particular talks about energy policy, more on kind of a national and global level, but it's of interest and use for people working on RLFs in this country, especially in rural areas where reservoirs for urban centers and near data centers are located. Going on to onto the next slide, just to start wrapping up here, public misconceptions and hype are an inherent problem that's baked into AI. Don did a great sort of summary of what types of intelligences are there. AGI is not available yet. We're not at that point, so it's not sentient. That metaphysical question of does it really understand anything? So it's still mostly pattern recognition and generation and language processing, again, predominantly in English, which is a bias. It is not conscious or creative, but it has a great ability to mimic. But at the same time, you interact with ChatGPT and you understand that, you see heartbreaking articles about teenagers getting bad advice, increasing their problems and even increasing suicide risk in society because it's just spitting back what it thinks what you want to get out of it. In the next slide, there are a couple of statistics about just conceptions and misconceptions. There are actually several Stanford studies about Americans and their beliefs about AI systems and their misunderstandings. Emily Bender, who on the next slide is actually one of the researchers named, has written a publication called Stochastic Parrots, and it's about how large language models fundamentally operate, which is actually very useful in understanding their basic operation. I think we can skip to the very last couple of slides here. Governance, accountability, and power. Right now, there's a concentration of power in just 4 monopolies in the US and therefore globally. There's an almost total lack of regulation. Laws have not kept up with privacy, much less AI. There's also this kind of global inequality and inequity in AI benefits, who gets to benefit from it and who is harmed by it. The weak accountability frameworks basically have a few billionaires basically dictating a lot of AI policy for every human being on this planet. And that should trouble us all. GrowAmerica obviously does not get into political discourse and cannot opine on political events. But just as a global phenomenon, it is problematic to have that much power and policy influence in the concentration of a few individuals. Moving on to the next slide, these are actually the four companies, OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, and Meta, and they control basically all the large language models and therefore, the entire frontier of AI at this point. The amount of investment into AI technologies is staggering. I mean, it's many times the size of most national economies. It's truly disturbing on that level. On the next slide, actually, there are a few resources here about larger issues of governance. Anyone trying to weave together an ethical AI policy should also consult these. Because in many cases they're written by refugees from these large AI companies who have left for reasons of conscience or other reasons. My very last couple of slides are best consumed, I think, offline. There are a number of articles that are all within the last month about various dimensions of AI on society, creativity, and policy. And at that, I think I will pass off to Mary.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jay. As Tony said, we have a few questions that we actually generated from AI. So we're going to start with looking ahead. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for AI to transform economic development and small business lending? So Ryan, do we want to start with you?
Yeah, I don't know. I see it being integrated into the software that we already have. So, whether it be ventures or something, that we're already using, where, we're uploading spreads to that, we're putting it in, and then if there's a generate narrative button there, I think that'll be the most common thing that we see right away. I'll let the other two guys kind of talk more about the future.
Dr. Don?
I honestly think that a lot of the agentic systems that are coming in right now are going to go well beyond what people think they can do in terms of and again, I great presentation on bias, because again, these aren't smart systems. They're models based on inputs and outputs that we do the best job we can making a model. A lot of times these models are very black box because when you have 1 trillion parameters, you can't glean out, especially when you're talking about random activations, you can't glean out exactly where these are. But I will say that a lot is going to change in the next 5 years, because what you're seeing right now with generative is just the tip of the iceberg.
Anything to add?
No, nothing specifically. I think that those questions cover it all entirely.
I happen to agree with Ryan. I know our underwriting software that we're using right now has started to add in, they've added in an AI assistant to help us with find information in the SBA SOP. They've added in some buttons to use AI to do some industry analysis and franchise analysis. So I think that's just going to, my opinion is that's just going to continue to get built out and improve the time it takes to, get our credit memos put together and moving along. The second question is, what skills or capacities should RLF managers be using now or building now to prepare to adequately use AI? Jay, you want to start?
I would say simply just keeping on top of which are the best AI models for your specific usage. That's the biggest thing, looking at it broadly. They evolve so quickly. And they also stumble. The introduction of GPT-5 this summer is just an example of it was a very fundamental re-release of that platform, and it had several major deficiencies, which in typical software you would not have seen, go to prime time. I mean, they're rectifying it, but that's just one example of their always competing with each other and always sort of neck and neck. And definitely different AI systems are much better at certain things than other ones based on what they're trained on and how they're designed to work.
Ryan, you have anything to add?
Not really. Just be curious.
Yeah, I've been working with some of our staff just with like the prompts to use and, using words like concise, clear, so that, we're not getting novels, we're just getting short pieces. Dr. John, do you have anything to add to the skill set you think people need?
Again, I'm not in finance.
Yep.
But I will say that one thing I tell students, especially as we're training students, is look when you're looking at jobs and about 75% of your day is repetitive tasks. Those are the kind of things that can be replaced with AI. However, the creativity portion, the deep intellectual thought, I don't think will ever go away. So those are the things that I ask my students to really hone in on. Critical thinking in terms of thinking beyond what the system tells you. I mean, there's some really nice tools, and we'll see more and more nice tools come out. But the deep knowledge that comes about for whatever you're doing, it really are the things that can't be replaced. So becoming a better learner and a better critical thinker are the things that I always hone people to do.
Definitely like that. Tony, do we have any other questions in the chat that we want to cover? I know there was a pretty robust discussion on PII going on in the chat, and I know that's always a concern for us.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
One thing we do when I upload things, there's no names on them. We take all that off. So it's just financial spreads. So they're not seeing, hey, this is so-and-so. There's no social security numbers there's no names associated. It's just we pull all the identifying data out of it.
Yeah, for sure. Tony, did you?
I think most of the questions in the chat have been answered in the chat. On the topic of PII, I just want to quote Dawn from the chat, which is that accidental PII disclosure shouldn't be left up to chance. Want to make sure that is said for the recording and the people in the back there, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's something that we all have to think about all the time. Definitely. Okay, well then I think that pretty much wraps up our questions. Tony, do you want to wrap up the webinar?
Sure, I just want to say thank you again to all of our presenters. Always great to have such a wonderful group here together. So thank you to Dr. Dawn Fuqua, Ryan, and Jay, and of course Mary for facilitating our panel. Their emails will be included in the slides that are uploaded to our RLF portal. They will also be shared with NADO, so they'll be shared in both spaces. The recording will be shared next week, again, through, I think, both the RLF COP listserv as well as NADO's. I see Dion nodding in the background. Great. So I did post that last question on Menti. Feel free to answer that. And I think that's all. So thank you again so much for your time. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, and enjoy everyone's Labor Day weekend. So that's upon us very soon. So have a great one. Thank you all for coming.